I see our curator, Mr. Jason French. Hello, Mr. French. Mr. John Bow, some good names here. Thank you all for joining us. This is going to be a very nice presentation tonight with Jeannine Kreinbrink, so we're looking forward to it. Looks like it's about 6:30. Are we on Facebook Live, Heather?
We are.
Okay, you want to go ahead and get that screen up and we will get started. It is my pleasure to welcome you to Northern Kentucky History Hour. I'm your host for tonight, Mary Jane Calderon, joining you from my home in Fort Wright. Also joining me by the power of Zoom is my co-host for the evening, Heather Cook, and our presenter, Jeannine Kreinbrink. So thank you, ladies, for joining me. Northern Kentucky History Hour is a project of Behringer-Crawford Museum, Northern Kentucky's history museum, that would not be possible without support. Thank you to all of our sponsors, including the City of Covington, Kenton County Fiscal Court, ArtsWave, Kentucky Arts Council, Northern Kentucky Sports Hall of Fame, the Carol Ann and Ralph V. Hale Jr. Foundation, and our members. If you're not yet a member of the museum, please consider joining for access to discounts and exclusive programming. Learn more and join at bcmuseum.org. We would love to hear from our viewers tonight, so if you have a question or comment to share, please type it in the chat or Q&A feature, and I will be sure to get to those at the end of the presentation. Let's meet tonight's presenter. Jeannine Kreinbrink is the president and senior partner at K&V Cultural Resources Management, LLC, which she co-founded in 2011 with Doug VonStrohe. She has combined a career in cultural resource management with conducting educational and public programs in archaeology, preservation, and history. Her archaeology career began at NKY, volunteering at BCM, where she has been Associate Archaeologist since 1981. She began a full-time career as an archaeologist in 1986, working on urban archaeology in Covington. Jeannine obtained her master's in 1992 from the University of Cincinnati and has worked as a professional archaeologist ever since. Jeannine serves on the board of directors for the Friends of Big Bone. She helped found and served on the board of the James A. Ramage Civil War Museum, and also taught as an adjunct professor to the anthropology and history departments at Northern Kentucky University from 1997 to 2014. Currently, she serves as the registrar for the Register of Professional Archaeologists. So thank you so much, Jeannine, for joining us. So before we get started, there's going to be a quiz question tonight. We've actually got 2 quiz questions tonight. So the first respondent to enter a correct answer in the chat or on Zoom or Facebook Live wins a Northern Kentucky History Hour prize and, most importantly, bragging rights. So I will let Jeannine read those questions to you. If she wants to go ahead and share your screen, Jeannine, we can go ahead and get started.
All right. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm really glad to be here tonight, and we are going to talk about 2 phases of Kentucky slavery. First, we're going to talk about John W. Anderson, who was a slave trader in the 1820s and 1830s, and Henry Bibb, who was a freedom seeker and abolitionist, 1830s to 1850s. So our trivia question, we do have 2. The first trivia question has to do with John W. Anderson. And you can see on the, I don't know if it's your left, but the one with the barred windows. Those barred windows have a name on them. And the question is, the bars on the windows date to what year? And the answer will be in the talk here in a little while. And the second one is, Henry Bibb lived in what city in Canada? Finally made it to Canada. We're going to start, we'll come back to those at the end. We're going to start with John W. Anderson. This is a black and white image of the Anderson slave pen after the outer barn was taken off. And we'll go into the history of that here shortly. National Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati moved the Anderson slave pen to become a centerpiece exhibit. It was actually moved in 2002, so it was in the building when it opened in 2004. And here is a relatively early image of the reconstructed slave pen inside the Freedom Center. And when we get to talking about the archaeology, if you notice the stones in the corners and along the sides, those are actual stones from the site. We actually tagged and numbered the stones as well as the logs. Here is the location of it. This is Route 10, Route the 8, I guess it's 9. The AA highway is about 2 miles to the north. And then this is Walton Pike coming down here to meet Route 10. And here is the property as it stood in 2002. There is a house here that was built by one of Anderson's daughters. And the slave jail building itself is back here on this second hill to the back, so it was not visible from any of the roads. And if you see that this different squares and things here, this square is 100 acres, and that's going to be the important one that we'll talk about. These are different parcels that were added at a later date. When we first went out there, you couldn't see it because it's inside this barn, but you can see in the roof, if you look at the roof line here, this difference is here. This is where it is inside the building. That's my old truck. Oh. Here's a different shot of it looking from a distance. And this image is inside the barn. You can see some of the stones from the chimney and the corner piers. The chimney itself had been removed a long time ago to provide access to use it as a tobacco barn. And so you can kind of see the setting out here on the hill. So they received federal funds in early 2002 to pay for the exhibit design and to pay for moving the slave pen. And we had 3 tasks as a result of that. 1 was to document the building, 2 was to do archaeology, and 3 was to do research. So we'll run through some of that real quick until we can get to John W. Anderson himself and how we found out about him. These are just a few images, just familiar with the condition that it was in. This was actually taken after the outer barn was taken off, and you can see that the floor had collapsed. A previous owner had let cows run through it, and you can see how it's kind of out of plumb here because of the chimney being moved. And at some point, I think in the 1970s, a previous owner had removed one of the barred windows and sold it to a collector, so it was missing a window. You can see the other barred windows. Here's another shot of it from the chimney end after the outer barn had been removed. These are later supports put up to hold it up inside the outer tobacco barn. Original logs had stone filling and then kind of mud plaster chinking and big corner piers. Just some more pictures of it showing the saddle or V-notching, the humongous chimney base. This is a 10-foot by 10-foot chimney base once we were able to excavate it. Here's a picture of one of the corner piers. The barred windows were built all in one piece with an outer frame board nailed to the log separately from the frame. The inner frame was spiked through the outer board into the logs, and the bars were inserted into that framework so they could not be moved or pushed out or taken out. So we figure one person built all of those and then they were inserted into the building. and we'll come back to them later. Here's another picture showing the logs starting to be removed and stacked. They were tagged and taken off one by one. Here's a shot, another shot of the end as we start to uncover the chimney. All this white is not snow, that is lime. There were a bunch of big bags of lime that had piled up there. So it was quite a mess. Here's after the building itself was removed and all that was left were the floor joists. They were log joists, but it kind of looked like a big ship at this point because they had all rotted and collapsed in the middle. So all that was removed. All right, so this is a little bit closer up map, get us reoriented again. Here is the slave building itself. This is the outer barn, is the dashed line. And the solid rectangle is the area we were limited to excavate in once we finally actually started excavating. So the bigger field here, Anderson Cemetery here, Anderson is buried there, John W. Anderson, his wife, his parents, several of his daughters, various other people are buried in that cemetery. Steep slope down to a stream. Out here is a brick scatter that turned out to be Anderson's house. And we had done, these are all shovel tests. We had done small test pits all over the property. Black dots are where we found early 19th century artifacts. And then the landowner, when it came time to actually excavate, would not let us excavate out here. And so we were pretty much limited to right inside this rectangle. So we pretty much excavated the whole thing. So as best as we could to try to get as much information as we could get. I don't know. Well, I'm trying to go to the next slide. No. Bear with me, it is not going up or down. All right. Are you all still there? Hello?
Yep, we can still hear you.
Okay, all right. I was hoping somebody could hear me because there we go. It was not letting me move the slide. So we're back. All right. This is a before view of the west side. That concrete block wall is part of the outer barn. You can see all the dirt here. And this is after we excavated it, the same view. Pretty intense piers on this house that you can see here. Here's another view of that massive chimney base. You see how deep it went into the ground, 10 feet wide. Another view of the piers. This is the door. The original building only had one door. It's a tall, narrow door. I see an iron bar across here. We believe that the original door was a regular door with a transom window. Above it, Anderson put that bar in. This doorknob, which is way bigger than it actually is, it's only about 2 inches in diameter, was found just down here below the doorway. And it is an early, very early 19th century brass doorknob. We'll get back to why that's interesting in a moment. There's some examples of some of the artifacts from the site. We have some blown glass. We have panels. We've got Washington's hair. We have flasks, a lot of early decorated ceramics. We have some 1840s, 30s, and 40s ceramics, which are after the time period of when Anderson was a slave dealer. And that'll be interesting in a minute as well. And the Caledonia pattern, we have two different colors of the same pattern of a plate, which dates between 1830 and 1840 by William Adams. Yep, and we're doing it again. All right, now I'm on. Next. All right. We have matches between the slave pen and the house, the artifacts we got underneath the building and the artifacts that we got out in the field match. So whoever was living in the house was also throwing trash away under the slave building. Lots of different personal artifacts, spoons. We have a large penny from 1831. This is a bone comb handle. All right, so tale of a building. We're going to kind of start at the beginning. 1804, a man named Moses Frazee bought 100 acres. That's the square that I showed you in the early slide of the map, where the slave pen's in the middle of it. He got married within a year and he needed a house. And we're pretty sure he built that house as a house with its nice, narrow, early 19th century doorway with this fine brass doorknob. And he was widowed in the early 1820s, and in 1825, he sold 100 acres to John W. Anderson. These are just bullets. Anderson's extended family, business of slavery, and horse racing are all involved. 1834, he died suddenly. Susan, his wife, his widow, and all the girls, he had 5 daughters. We believe the building served as a kitchen after that. 1844, the daughters fight over his land. 1857, it sold out of the family. So while we have this slide up, I'm going to read a couple of short pieces of information. So the building may have been originally 1.5 stories in height, and we'll get to why we think that in a minute. At least one window with glass window panes. We have some very early window glass. Trash disposal patterns indicate that a small porch may have existed in front of and extending north from the original door. They also dispose of trash beneath the building. Initial inside, the building exhibits evidence of shelves and internal division of the second floor. We're not sure if those date to Frazee or Anderson's time period. Anderson bought the 100 acres in 1825. We think he probably lived in this house to begin with. And at some point, his parents, Worsham and Miss Anaya Anderson, also lived on the property, and they are buried in the cemetery. We believe he built the brick mansion house, and I call it that because of a court case, sometime after 1825. He was certainly living there by the time of his death in 1834 because his widow claimed 100 acres as her home farm when she filed her dower claim in early 1835. All right, so timeline thing we're going to go through here about John W. Anderson before I run out of time and have to switch over to Henry Bibb. So we'll get through as much of this as we can. He was in the Kentucky militia along with Thomas Marshall in the war, a friend, also I think a nephew of the Supreme Court Justice during the War of 1812. In 1818, he's listed in a court case over misplaced hogsheads of tobacco on a flatboat trip to New Orleans. 1823, he was a witness in a trial about a slave in a flatboat trip with a guy named Edward Stone, who I have shown here in bold. Edward Stone was a notorious slave dealer whose slaves killed him in 1826 on an Ohio River flatboat trip. So we can't prove Anderson was selling slaves in 1823, but he was certainly involved with a pretty high-profile slave dealer at that time. So then he buys the property in 1825. So then after that, he starts a series of loans and borrowing money and various things like that. And we know all this because after he died without a will. And a whole bunch of people came forward and filed lawsuits against his estate. We'll come back to that in a minute. So he also had issues with slaves escaping, which good thing, not good on the slaves. And most of it has to do, we believe, with the people that he was transporting downriver. So in 1830, Jim and John escaped, and this is the ad that Anderson placed in the local paper. And I have a little blue highlighting on a couple of places where, according to Anderson, Jim had on, when he went off, a horse lock and a small tongue chain of a wagon to it. And John had on each of his ankles a horse lock and a small trace chain. So instead of using regular chains, he was using the kinds of the chains that he would have used on horses to attach to these young men. Now, I don't know, hopefully, I don't know the answer to that. I think that they were probably part of what I call the slave deal gone bad 5 days later. And this comes from a court case after Anderson's death. Anderson was taking, quote unquote, a lot of Negroes to Dover on November 15th. And he got involved with a man named James Kempe in a purchase of a person that did not go well. So it's complicated, but I think that this is probably connected to that. So 1831, he borrowed $10,000 from John Marshall and then paid it back. 1831, he's involved in a court case in New Orleans where guys sued him because an enslaved woman died 2 months after she was purchased. 1832, he borrowed some more money from Thomas Marshall. And all this is in the lawsuits after he died. So Anderson built up his slave export business through the late 1820s to early 1830s. He became a major local dealer and exporter of humans from Kentucky to the Deep South. His plans included expansion and continued increase of revenue. He made 1 to 2 trips a year to either Natchez or New Orleans between 1830 and 1832. Enslaved persons, horses, and produce such as wheat were the product that he transported. In 1832, in November, Anderson wrote a letter to Thomas Marshall, and it's like a 3-page letter, and I've got a little bit of it right here, and the spelling is original, so I didn't change the spelling. But in this letter, he lays out his business plan. And Anderson was not someone who, in Mason County, for example, he didn't go to the courthouse on court days and buy enslaved people there. And he lays this out, and I bolded the among your friends and acquaintances. I want you to find out and purchase all the Negroes you can of a certain description. You can read all this, men and boys and girls, how much he wants him to pay for them. And he says, let them stay where they are if you think there'll be no danger, which I take it to mean running away. Otherwise, send them to my house and I take care of them. Among your friends and acquaintances, I think you might pick up 15 or 20, and that will be as much money as something I couldn't read will make all year. So his pattern was to go to the people he knew and say, I would like to purchase these people. And then he would take them to the farm and keep them there until he was ready to make a trip down the river. And now we come to the bars. So the barred windows are stamped G and J. Schoenberger, who was a company in Pittsburgh who did not open until 1832. So the barred windows could not have gone in until at least 1832. Well, we know we bought the property in 1825. So I think that the increasing problem of young people trying to escape probably prompted him to convert this building. And we also found his name stamped on the second floor. One of the logs on the second floor. So there's his name. That's why we think he might have raised the roof from 1.5 to 2 stories. All right. 3 sales between November 1832 and May 1833. Anderson sold over $38,000 worth of persons. And I have $2,003 because that's when we wrote the report. But that 1.2 million is 2023 money. So a lot of money. Major Lexington slave dealers of the same period only claimed sales in the $5,000 to $8,000 range. Anderson was a major player in the Kentucky to Natchez slave trade during his lifetime. In the meantime, he was still having problems with escaping slaves. 2 young men in 1830, 4 ran away in 1833. There are more, but so Jim and John, 1830, 1833, Carter, Emmanuel, Hannah, and Carolyn are the 4 who ran away then. So when he died, July 23rd, 1834, he didn't leave a will. He's 41 years old. The local legends say that he died chasing an escaping slave, that he fell off his horse and was killed. We don't know the truth of that, but that's the story. He only owned this farm for 9 years, but he was a legend and a scary tale in Mason County ever since. So many, many court cases filed against his estate. When he died, there were 32 enslaved persons on the farm, when usually in the tax records there's less than 10. Because he died, they are named in his probate inventory, and we have all their names. These are just a few of them. Simon, Bob, Fenton, Ephraim, William, Washington, Phyllis, Minea, and Child, Matilda, Ann, George, America, and more. 13 of these are listed as children. So after he died, his daughters, once the younger daughter turned 18, which was 1844, they filed a claim in the courts to get the property divided up, and which is really good for our research because tract 1, this L-shaped tract right here, is 46 acres and the jailhouse. So it actually names it in the deed. And his daughter Elizabeth, who was married to a man named Brooks by that time, and they built a house over here. And in tract 2, 36 acres and the mansion house to Mary S. Anderson. And that one had the dower right for the mother, Susan S. Anderson. So the house here in our field, slave pen right there. So archaeology, the building was built before 1810, was domestic use early. Then after the 1830, by 1832, it becomes a slave jail. There's little archaeological evidence for the slave jail itself, except that there is a gap in the domestic artifacts and the flat glass, the thickness of flat glass. So lots of early artifacts, late 1830s, 1840s, not so much from 1820s and 30s. Come on. So Anderson bought it 1825, was a house first converted to a slave pen. The Schoenberger iron mark dates the changes to post 1832. So it was actually a slave jail for only 2 years. between when he altered it and when he died. The Anderson mark on the second floor, which was on, I believe, this log. So we think that he probably raised it up. So, conclusions. Anderson was a prosperous man, but a risky business partner. He bought 100 acres, built a brick house, converted the log building into a jail or pen for enslaved persons. It's a powerful statement on slavery in the Ohio Valley, and it is at the Underground Railroad Freedom Center in Cincinnati. And if you haven't been there, I encourage you to go and visit it. So now we're going to transition to a much more positive story. From a slave trader to a successful freedom seeker and abolitionist. And we're going to talk about Henry Bibb for the next 15 minutes or so. This is one of the two images that I know of Henry Bibb. And the people there in the field are standing at the site where the last place he was enslaved in Kentucky. And this is the Gatewood Farm. It's outside of Bedford in Trimble County, Kentucky. And myself, along with Doug VonStrohe, my work partner, we have been excavating there with the Oldham County History Center, which is in LaGrange, since 2005. So Henry Bibb, and I've got a lot of words in these next couple slides, so we can run through Henry Bibb's life. He was born about 1815 in Shelby County, of which Trimble was part of at that time. This is the other image of Henry, also known as Walton. His mother was named Mildred Jackson. From 1815 to the late 1820s, he lived with her on a farm as enslaved people. His father could have been a man named James Bibb. That's who she said was his father. We don't really know a lot about who that was. Their owner was David White. As a young child and a young man, he was loaned out to other people to do work, often mistreated. He ran away multiple times. 1820s up to about 1833. And all this comes from Henry's biography. He was sold to a man named Veris in Newcastle, Kentucky, treated cruelly, ran away, sold back to White, resumed his escape attempts. 1833, met a young woman, also enslaved, owned by a man named William Gatewood. He met Melinda, and they were allowed to get married. They had a daughter, Frances, that he names. We don't know when she was born. He convinced William Gatewood to buy him so that they would be on the same property, because his goal was to get them out, to escape. So he would run away, and then he would get a job on a steamboat or on a flatboat or on the docks, or I think he made it all the way to Cincinnati, various small towns in southern Indiana, and I get a little bit of money, and then he would come back. And invariably he got caught, and he did this multiple times, tried to get his family free. Gatewood finally had enough and sold all of them to Louisville, and then they were sold and taken to Louisiana. And he tried to do the same thing down there, and then they were separated. She and the child were sold, and he never did find them again. 1842, he made it to Detroit, excuse me, and then over to Windsor, Canada, probably by that center route coming up the west side of Indiana, because at that point he was coming from Louisiana and Mississippi. Made it all the way to Canada. He learned to read and write, became very well educated over that next 10 years. Became an abolitionist, joined the abolitionist movement, kind of an early Frederick Douglass. He went around, gave speeches, helped to raise money, became very well known, especially in Canada. Met a free African-American woman named Mary. When he realized he was never going to find his family again, they were married, and she joined him in his abolitionist work. He published his autobiography in 1848. And in 1851, he published a newspaper from Sandwich, which is outside of Windsor, called The Voice of the Fugitive. And this is volume 1, number 1. It is an image with Henry Bibb listed as the editor. He also became very involved with the Underground Railroad, had contacts throughout that network. He arranged for his mother Mildred to move from Kentucky and live with them. Later on, to his 7 brothers, somewhere else I saw 3 were able to escape and join Bibb in Canada. Unfortunately, he never did find his Melinda or their daughter. He helped establish a group called the Refugees Home Society. By 1854, when he died, they had purchased 2,000 acres of land and given 25-acre plots to 40 escaped slaves, most near Windsor, Canada. He attended and led conventions and societies against slavery. October 1853, a fire destroyed his printing office, and he continued publishing a newsletter. August 1854, this is an obituary that was published in Salem, Ohio, Anti-Slavery Bugle on August 12th. This is where he's buried in St. John Anglican Cemetery in Windsor, Canada. And so lots of interesting information in here. This is a plaque in Canada about him. Why my forward's not working? Here we go. So the Gatewood Farm in Trimble County was the last place that they were enslaved. It's where Melinda had lived and worked, and where Henry Bibb was right before they were sold. This is an image of the log house. You can see the logs here. It's been covered with siding. This is after the rear addition came off. I've got some other pictures here. So here's Bedford, Kentucky. This is US 42. This right here. Ohio River's up there. This is Route 421. And on this hill, right outside of Bedford, is where the log house is located. And this was the Gate Farm. That's the Gatewood Cemetery right there. The original road to the house actually came off of the street right here by the courthouse and went down the creek and up to the house. Here's just an image of some of the volunteers excavating at the site. It's another picture from early on. So we started working there in 2005. And you can see this is in grass, and here's the trailer, which left after a few years. We had them till all the way around the house, and all these flags mark the locations of artifacts. And we gridded the whole thing out in 5 by 5 meter squares, which is about 15 feet across. And you can see people wandering around, putting pin flags where they saw artifacts. And this shows the distribution of some of the artifacts. So here's the house. North is up. Cut nails are the early kinds of nails. Wire nails are later. Window glass, which is kind of everywhere. Stoneware, more 19th century. Pre-Civil War ceramics and glass in kind of different locations out here. Plain ceramics everywhere. So we were interested in the combination of the older nails, stoneware, and the pre-Civil War ceramics and glass. And you kind of see a hole here, like people are throwing things out and about. So there were also, excuse me, a lot of big rocks on the surface right in here. So we started excavating right in addition, and we found a chimney base right out beyond the addition and a stone wall, and it turned out this was a kitchen, and it turned out a big basement or cellar from later on. But so before this addition went on, there was a kitchen. That came down, the addition went up. We worked in here for years, digging in this area and digging in the cellar that was behind here. And then the addition came off, and the big tree over here, half of it fell down, and it got too dangerous, really close. So we went back to the map, and we're like, okay, well, where's all this other stuff? And it's all across a line across here, out behind the house. So we started digging out here, and we found a cellar. We found a burned area, which we think is a fireplace or a hearth, and we found what's called a pit cellar. And these are small holes. Here's just another picture of people screening dirt outside the building. There's a close-up of the pit cellar. And here's a profile of it. We found a blue glass bead, which are very positively associated with enslaved occupations. A lot of personal artifacts, a school slate, smoking pipes, various buttons from this time period. And I don't want to go to the end just yet. So let me read. Have I got time? A couple minutes. Okay. So the pit cellar and the accompanying structure, we did find evidence of a structure on like a 1950 aerial in that vicinity. That analyzing this artifact assemblage that we collected also follows trends found at other slavery sites. We have other beads, earlier 19th century artifacts as well, food remains, things like that. The importance of this research lies in the fact that even though the area of interest is small in size, results add a more detailed context and past lifeways on the Gatewood farm. Much of the research has focused on Henry Bibb and the Gatewood family. This work provides more insights about lesser known enslaved community that was present throughout the antebellum time period. Hold on. Some of the information that I'm reading comes from Doug VonStrohe's master's thesis that he completed earlier on the site itself. This investigation satisfies at least 3 of Kentucky's statewide objectives in their state plan, understanding settlement patterns, determining activity areas, and educating and involving public participation. All of this research gives a profound and positive impact, not just at the local level, but nationwide. This began as the Henry Bibb Heritage Trail Stakeholder Project, and it is now part of the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, and it's one of only 14 listings in Kentucky. So this provides engaging experiences of exploring and understanding past life ways while highlighting the under-recognized enslaved population to both local and national audiences. So I think that's just about done. I am finished. And you can see the quiz answers there that are on the bottom of your screen. And if anyone's got any questions, I think I left some time for questions and answers.
Yes, well, thank you so much, Jeannine. I know Heather's been chatting in the chat. I've seen the chats coming in. So Heather, what kind of, first of all, did we have a winner for one or both of the questions?
We did have winners for both of the questions. For the first question, that was, what year did the bars on the slave pen date to? That was 1832 or after. We had a couple people put in the right answer, but the person who got it first was Cindy and Woody Schuster. So congratulations. You'll get your prize in the mail. And then the second question, which was like, what city in Canada did Henry Bibb move to? That was Windsor. That was Debbie Blattman got that first. We again had a couple correct answers, but she was first. So congratulations. And could you put your mailing address in the chat so that we can get your prize to you? And then I guess from there, we will move on to questions. So the first one that we have is, this is when you were talking about John W. Anderson, and they were wondering if the farm is still there.
Yes. The farm is still there. Obviously, the building itself was removed. It's still private property. So, yes.
And then they were also wondering if you've been able to excavate the original house.
No, unfortunately not. We got an artifact sample from the small test pits that we dug, but the landowner did not want anyone excavating outside of immediately around the barn. So unfortunately, no, we did not.
And so the next question is, what is the average length of time that an enslaved person would live in a pen?
For Anderson, it was probably up to maybe 6 months. It looked like he, based on the taxes that he had to pay. So we've got some great tax records from Natchez, and I think even New Orleans, where he had to pay taxes after he sold people. And it looked like he was going there once or twice a year. And several of those years he went twice. So they would be taken to the farm and held there probably up to about 5 months or so, because it would take probably several weeks to get there once they got on the flatboat. So not a long period of time. There were between 8 and 10 people who, enslaved people who lived there permanently. People who took care of the racehorses, and I'm sure someone who was doing the cooking and, you know, hay and whatever farm stuff that had to be done.
And our next question is, what do you do with the found artifacts?
They are at the Freedom Center. Well, no, I take that back. Most of them are at the University of Kentucky. There are artifacts at the Freedom Center that are on display outside the slave jail building. But the rest of them are at the University of Kentucky.
And is the Gatewood pen still standing? And if so, where?
It is half collapsed. It's still in its original position, but all of the pictures that I didn't want to show it looking really terrible. But in the last 2 years, it has half collapsed. There was a couple of storms that did a lot of damage to it. And the big tree that half fell down, the other half fell down. So it's in pretty bad condition right now, unfortunately.
And someone else was wondering if the Bradford site is open to the public.
Bradford site.
I don't know if they can clarify that in the chat and come back.
And that was from Janice.
I do have a Bradford site I'm working on, but it's under a school building now, but I don't know. I mean, where the slave pen came from is private property. So no. And the Gatewood farm is also private property, and we have permission to go there when we do our digs, but otherwise it's not accessible. Otherwise,
They did clarify that they were referring to the Gatewood site, so that did answer.
Oh, no, it's private property, except when we do public digs through the Oldham County History Center. And we may actually have been there the last time in July, so.
Somebody did ask, is the Bradford site in Bradford, Kentucky?
It's Bedford, sorry, Bedford, Kentucky, not Bradford, Bedford. We may actually not be going back there for now, so.
And then the last question as of right now is, was the slave pen an original settler's log cabin?
Moses Frazee, he was not the land grant holder, but he bought it in 1804. So very early. And we believe he built it, so.
And someone else was wondering who funds to work on these projects? Like, how does the funding come in?
On the slave pen, and this was before the Freedom Center opened, right? So they opened in 2004, and we did the archaeology before that. They got a grant from the Federal Department of Education that helped pay for all of the work and moving it, actually literally moving it and putting it back up and for the exhibit. So that was essentially a grant from the federal government. The work we do with the Oldham County History Center at the Gatewood Farm and the Henry Bibb project is mostly volunteer. Sometimes we get expenses, but that's, and that also comes through grants and sponsorships. So these are not like developer projects or, projects that are paid because done because someone has to get a permit. They're mostly, if there is money, it's through grants.
Currently, that is the last question we have. So I don't know if there's anything else you want to, oh, no, how does one go about volunteering on these projects?
For the work that we do through the Oldham County History Center, watch their website, and they're in LaGrange, Kentucky, and that's the Oldham County History Center. We're actually going to be out next Sunday, whatever day that is. That's October 8th, 7th or 8th. We're actually going to check out a different site. If any of you have ever heard of a woman named Delia Webster, if you haven't, look her up. She was an abolitionist in Kentucky in the 1850s and tended to get herself arrested and put in jail for her abolitionist activities. And we have identified her property. So we're actually be visiting that. And that is has volunteer opportunities, but look at the Oldham County History Center's website for public archaeology. And that's how you get involved with that. I don't have my calendar.
And
Yeah, October 8th.
that was, as of now, the last question we have. And somebody went ahead and put that link in the
Oh,
chat.
nice. Okay.
So if anybody's interested, the link is in the chat there.
Thank you, Joanna.
I don't know if we,
She said that looks like it would be fun to volunteer. I bet it would be. Is that all, Heather?
yeah, as of right now,
Yeah.
that's all the questions we have.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Jeannine, for such an excellent
Welcome.
presentation. Once again,
Thank
we
you.
always look forward to having you as presenter on Northern Kentucky History Hour.
Thank you.
So Heather, if you want to go ahead and get our slides up, we'll go ahead and wrap up. And we've got some promotions, a lot of things going on at the museum that we want to share. So right now we have the inaugural Diana Taylor Art Show is now on display in our Education Center. This is featuring artwork by local high school students. The paintings are going to be on display through November 5th. And there's going to be prizes up to $250 to be awarded to the winning students. So be sure to check those out. There's some really cool pieces of work there. And let's see, calling all little witches, goblins, and ghouls. Our next Chippy Sensational Kids Club is going to be on Thursday, October 13th at Behringer-Crawford Museum. Preschoolers and their parents are invited to celebrate Halloween with spooky stories, ghoulish crafts, and bewitching activities. There's a $3 materials fee plus child's museum admission. Register at least 3 days in advance by calling 859-491-4003.
That would be probably Thursday the 12th, because Friday is the 13th.
I was just thinking that. I was like, I thought it was going to be Friday 13th. So that's a misprint on my part. So I apologize for that. So it must be Thursday, October 12th. I'll have to check that. But make sure to check bcmuseum.org and we'll get that fixed right away. I do know that on November 11th, the holidays are going to be just around the corner. So we're going to have our Holly Jolly Days returning. So this is going to be our 32nd year of our annual holiday toy trains. We're already getting them all ready. We've got lots of volunteers. There's lots of volunteer opportunities as well. If you love trains or love coming to the museum and sharing the trains with our guests, please get involved. You can do that as well at bcmuseum.org. So that'll all start November 11th. So that more information will be coming soon on all those great activities. Lastly, our next Northern Kentucky History Hour is going to be on Tuesday. So thank you all for joining us, everyone that joined us for the switch on Tuesdays. I see some people it's worked out for, so that's really good. Brewster Rhodes is going to be presenting the Ohio River Way, promoting recreation, connecting communities, and celebrating the Ohio River way of life. Please be sure to tune into that. We will not be having Northern Kentucky History Hour on the 31st because that is Halloween. So sorry, we're going to be skipping that one, but we'll be back in the next November, I believe, 14th. For more Northern Kentucky history throughout the week, check out our Facebook page and our YouTube channel, where you can find the latest curators chat, along with all of our past Northern Kentucky History Hour presentations. They're also available on the YouTube at BC Museum. So please like and subscribe. And that's all that we have time for this evening. Thank you again to all of our sponsors and supporters of BCM. Until next Tuesday, 2 weeks from now, take care, everyone, and good night. Thank you all. And thank you so much, Jeannine. We appreciate it. Bye, everyone.